For today's classic interview, we're going back to when I spoke to Chaim Levin back in 2014, and he told us about the religious gay conversion therapy that he, saying experienced isn't even right, really was sort of tortured through and suffered through. And this is relevant for a couple of reasons. Number one, gay conversion therapy for children continues to be banned in more and more states, and that's a good thing. We also have a vice president currently in Mike Pence, who, although he never actually stated he supports the use of, electroshock for gay conversion or anything of the sort, he did previously say that he would be okay with federal funding to treat people that want to change their sexual behavior, which is very often coded language that the religious right likes to use, talking about behavior rather than sexual orientation, as if these are merely issues of choice. So, in that context, we'll go back to my interview from a few years ago with Haim Levin, the topic, of course, gay conversion therapy. I'm joined today by Haim Levin, who has been actively campaigning against so-called conversion therapy for years and writing about the subject. And Haim, your story is so interesting, and I want to kind of start at the beginning. You grew up as an Orthodox Jew in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, not very far from where I live or from where our studio is, in fact. Talk a little bit about your background. Did you always know that you were gay? Did you always identify as a gay man?
Hi, David. Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for having me. And that was pretty accurately described. And so, I mean, your question has a kind of a couple of answers in the sense that during my childhood, I had this confusion because I was sexually abused by a relative for quite a number of years. And for many years afterward, I believed that this abuse that my cousin had inflicted upon me had actually been the cause of my sexual orientation. Now, granted, I grew up in a very devout Orthodox community in the sense that in our schooling system, we had no reading, no writing, no spelling, no math, no science, no history, no formal English secular subjects. Strictly Bible studies from 9 to 5 every day, including Sunday. So I didn't really know much about science or about the world. I knew that there was like the gay community out there in the village that, that was whatever and not something that I was connected to. But I was inside, I was deeply troubled because I knew that I was attracted to people of the same gender, and I kind of like just kept pushing it away with the hope that, well, maybe if I study enough or if I pray enough, it will just go away, or something like that. And I was really certain that again, because I had no knowledge about this, I was certain that if I could overcome my sexual abuse from my childhood, then somehow I could change, my attractions. And that's kind of where Jonah came in, because they were the first ones to take that idea and to kind of magnify it times 10 and say, yes, of course, the reason you're gay is because of your sexual abuse. It's also because you had a distant father and an overbearing mother. And bottom line, they said we could change you. So that was all I needed to hear to start. Right when I turned 18,
Yeah, so let's
I was
tell for our audience who isn't familiar, Jonah is Jews offering new alternatives to homosexuality. And Chaim, talk a little bit about when a rabbi actually told you that there's a group that specializes in this, whatever it was that he meant by this, presumably, of course, the so-called conversion therapy. So you started going to, I hesitate to even use the term therapist, but talk about who it is that you started to see and what those sessions were like.
Well, there were it was kind of compounded. There was I had disclosed to this rabbi. I mean, it wasn't. I didn't really keep it much of a massive secret in the sense that I never identified as gay, but people knew that I was struggling, or oh, I guess the way things in this community are like, oh yeah, he's such a pity, he has problems. But I kind of confided in this rabbi. I said, I don't know what to do. And he told me about Jonah. Now, I had seen their advertisements in the Jewish press, which is a mainstream, pretty ultra orthodox right wing newspaper that is read by everyone, including my parents, every week. So when he told me Jonah, like, I had already heard of them, but I never, so I connected with them. I spoke to first the director, Mr. Arthur Goldberg, who who when I met him, he said, you must sign up for this program called Journey into Manhood, which is run by one of their sister organizations called People Can Change. He said that's the first step that you have to do, and we also recommend, and then after you do that weekend, we could start helping you out here. This was just around the time that I was turning 18. So I turned 18 on May 13th, and then on June 1st, I was headed to Pennsylvania to Journey into Manhood weekend with a bunch of other men, and it was kind of like a very controlled environment where I was frightened. I had no idea what to expect. And a lot of very weird and disturbing things happen on those weekends. And I've spoken about a number of them, both, in writing in my articles. I've also testified to them. And I can tell you this, what definitely, in hindsight, I look back and I say, something was so wrong in that it was the first time that I had been interacting with other gay people, but it was also the first time that I had been interacting with other people who weren't literally just like me from the Crown Heights community, meaning there were other Jews there, but I had never even talked to other Jewish people, even though they were technically Orthodox Jews. They weren't from our sect. And one of the more disturbing things that happened was that there was a 63-year-old man, a widower, an Orthodox widower, who was on this weekend. And after the weekend, he would call me nonstop. He was calling me all the time. He wanted to talk, and he was leaving me all these voicemails. I kept ducking his calls. And the last time I saw him, which was in a group session by JONAH at JONAH's headquarters in Jersey City. During this group meeting, he admitted to molesting 3 of his students, 2 or 3, I'm not sure the exact number, of his students in the religious school where he came from. This never left the room, and there were 10 people in the room. And now, putting it all together, I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. Now, it's become very clear that JONAH and these other groups, they treat gay people like pedophiles. They were treating pedophiles. I mean, I have a friend whose father was an abuser, and before his mom reported him, he was told by the directors of JONAH, "Don't report your husband to us. Don't report your husband to the police. Send him to us, and we'll treat him, and he'll be safe. And he'll be safe to be around your other children." And that, for me personally, aside from the fraud aspect of that, this is like trying to fix something that's not broken in a lot of very, dangerous ways. The irresponsibility to put admitted pedophiles, without in contact with 18-year-old kids, even though an 18-year-old is considered an adult, it's so reckless. And
well, sure, and of course, the premise that both require the same type of treatment is obviously patently absurd. So, hey, we don't have an unlimited amount of time, so there's a few other things I want to touch on. What were the credentials of these so-called therapists that you were assigned to work with?
Well, they didn't have credentials. They called themselves life coaches. Now, I had been seeing a female therapist here in Brooklyn, and when I started attending JONAH, Arthur Goldberg told me it would be better for me to see a male therapist, and he recommended their life coach who works out of their office, Mr. Alan Downing.
So let's talk about that, because I think that's just, it really epitomizes what it is that's going on here. Talk about this last meeting that you had, which you've spoken about and written about, with the layers of clothing.
Right. So I had been seeing Mr. Downing kind of sporadically for about a year and a half, between monetary concerns and just, this hard, I was felt like I was in exile because I wasn't changing yet. I was doing all these things to change. And I came to Downing's office, and he started off the session by getting me to talk about. Now, before I do that, if you don't mind, I'm just going to step back and say that, part of the theories behind these things are, you have a broken masculine image,
right,
or your masculinity needs to be repaired. And so he said, well, I want you to create a few messages that you feel to be true about yourself, negative messages. And as we created them, he said, okay, now I want you to say them out loud. He instructed me to stand in front of a mirror, and he said, say one message and take off a layer of clothing. Now, immediately I had known which direction the session was headed in. And I turned to him and I said, I'm really not comfortable doing this. Mr. Downing himself admits to having what he calls same-sex attraction, otherwise known as gay. And he, and I was like, I'm not comfortable taking my clothes off in front of a man who's like 3 times my age, locked in front of a mirror, especially given the fact that it was very uncomfortable. But I told him no. His no, my no to him was not respected, in the sense that he turned it back around on me and said, well, why are you afraid? What are you afraid of? If you don't do this, then you're not going to be completing the work. And that's the other trap that they make, which is, oh, you didn't change because you didn't work hard enough.
Right. It seems that the entire thing is very carefully crafted, first to make it seem like you're an outlier, there's something we have to fix. And then if there's any resistance whatsoever to the so-called treatment that's prescribed, you're then blamed for being a part of the problem, or at least of not fixing the problem that they've indicated exists.
Right, exactly. And it essentially, it ended in my clothes were completely off. I was completely naked in front of him, and he instructed me to touch my private parts as a indication or symbol or something that will that would indicate me taking back my masculinity. It's kind of similar to what Michael Ferguson said when we announced the lawsuit, which had to do with the oranges and the balls. It's all kind of these like ridiculous exercises that are supposed to represent something bigger. But again, as a survivor of 4 years of sexual abuse by my first cousin, who was 6 years older than me, I've spent the last 10 years of my life transitioning from victim to survivor, and this was a real setback in a way, because I tried to exert my power and say no, like, I don't want to do this. This is not right.
Right.
But it really wasn't respected. And I can say with certainty, the most offensive part to all this is that we've been in depositions over the last few months, and repeatedly I've been asked to equate that session with sexual abuse of my childhood. Which one was worse? Which one was more traumatizing to you? And like, that's just ridiculous. But that's it's not. It doesn't seem that they're denying that this happens. They're just defending it.
Absolutely. Well, Haim, listen, there's so much more we could talk about. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We're going to be following the lawsuit. We didn't get into the details, but as you mentioned, there is a lawsuit, so we will follow it, and we'll definitely have you back on. I can't thank you enough for being here and sharing your story.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
This is viewer-supported independent media. Please support our program by going to davidpakman.com/membership and becoming a member today.